The photos sitting in your Google account right now, your kids' birthdays, your home, the faces of everyone you love, are being processed in ways that were never clearly explained to you when you hit allow. Not weeks ago, not months ago. Right now, while you're watching this. And the thing that makes this different from every other privacy conversation you've had is that this isn't about some obscure feature buried in a developer menu. This is Google Photos, the app a billion people trust with their most private moments. There are 4 settings inside it that you need to change. Let me walk you through every single one. Most people signed up for Google Photos because it solved a real problem: running out of phone storage. You take a photo, it backs up automatically, you delete it from your phone, problem solved. And for years, that's basically what it was. A convenient backup tool with a clean interface and impressive search features. But the app you're using today is something different. Google Photos is now deeply integrated with Google's AI systems, your broader Google account data, and in some configurations, third-party apps you may have connected years ago and completely forgotten about. The images you've uploaded, and if you've been using this app for any length of time, we're talking potentially tens of thousands of photos. Those images are being used to power features that go well beyond simple storage. Here's the first thing you need to understand. Google Photos uses facial recognition to group your photos by person. They call this feature face grouping, and depending on where you live, it's been active by default. Now, Google says this processing happens on device in newer versions. And that's partly true. But the groupings themselves, the associations between faces, and the labels you assign to them like Mom or Sarah, or your child's name, that data is tied to your Google account. It doesn't stay on your phone. That's the part most people don't realize they agreed to. The second thing, and this is the one that stopped me cold when I first looked into it, there's a setting called Smart Features and Personalization. What this does is allow Google to use data across its products, including your Photos activity, to personalize your experience across Gmail, Search, and other Google services. The Norwegian Consumer Council, which is an independent government-funded consumer rights organization, published a detailed analysis of Google's privacy settings in 2022, and specifically called out how these cross-product data sharing options are presented in ways that obscure the actual scope of what you're agreeing to. The setting sounds helpful. The reality is broader than the name suggests. Think about what that actually means for you. Google can look at the activity around what you photograph, when, how often, what the content is, and use that to build a more complete picture of who you are as a consumer. When you photographed baby gear because you were expecting. When you started photographing hiking trails. When the photos shifted from holiday parties to home renovation projects. All of that is behavioral data, and behavioral data is the raw material of targeted advertising. The Electronic Frontier Foundation, which has spent decades tracking how tech companies handle personal data, has consistently flagged Google's cross-product data integration as one of the more aggressive examples of this in the industry. Their researchers have pointed out that the sheer volume of data Google holds on any given user, search history, location, emails, and now tens of thousands of photos, creates a profile that's remarkable in its detail. Then there's the metadata issue. Every photo your phone takes contains XIF data, embedded information that includes the exact GPS coordinates of where the photo was taken, the time, the device model. When you share a photo from Google Photos, either directly or through a shared link, that metadata travels with it by default, unless you've turned off a specific setting most people have never seen. Privacy researcher Wolfie Crystal, who has spent years documenting how personal data flows through consumer tech platforms, has written extensively about how location metadata embedded and shared. Photos can be used to reconstruct someone's physical movements over time. It's not theoretical. It's something people actively exploit. And the shared link problem is its own issue. When you create a sharing link in Google Photos, for a vacation album, for photos from a family event, that link is accessible to anyone who has it. No login required, no authentication, no expiry unless you set one manually. If someone forwards that link, or if it turns up somewhere unexpected, every photo in that album is viewable by anyone. Yet the app's default behavior makes creating these links feel completely routine, like sending a text. This is the part that bothers me most about how Google presents all of this. The controls exist, but they're not where you'd expect to find them, and they're not explained in a way that makes the stakes obvious. To understand why any of this matters beyond just this one app, you have to understand what Google actually is. And it's not a photo storage company. It's an advertising company. Roughly 77% of Alphabet's annual revenue comes from advertising. Google Photos, like Gmail, like Maps, like Android, is part of the data infrastructure that makes those advertising products work. That's not a theory. It's in their annual filings. The way this works is that the more Google knows about you, the more precisely it can target ads on your behalf. And precision is what advertisers pay for. A generic ad for baby products is worth a few cents in ad revenue. An ad for baby products served to someone whose photos show they just had a child, whose Gmail contains delivery notifications from baby gear retailers, and who lives within a particular demographic zip code. That ad is worth considerably more. You're not the customer here. You're the product, and your photos are part of what makes that product more valuable. I want to be fair. Google is not the only company operating this way, and there are aspects of Google Photos that are genuinely impressive. But there's a difference between using your data to improve the product you're actually using and building a profile of you that feeds into a global ad targeting system. That's the line that a lot of people feel has been crossed, and not without reason. It's like lending someone a spare key so they can water your plants while you're away, then coming home to discover they've made copies for their business partners. The original arrangement wasn't unreasonable. What it became is something else entirely. When Google updated its terms of service in 2023, they added language about using publicly available information to train AI models. What's less clear, and what digital rights advocates have raised concerns about, is exactly what role private user content plays in AI development over time, and how that's disclosed. Google states that personal photos aren't used to train general AI models without explicit consent. But consent in this context is buried inside account settings that most users have never navigated. When I sat down to audit my own Google account, it took me 40 minutes to find everything relevant. 40 minutes, and I was specifically looking for it. That's not an oversight. That's a design choice. If you've had a vague sense that something felt off about how much Google knows about you, you're not imagining things. The settings exist to change this. The question is whether you can find them, so let me just show you. Let's get into the actual fixes, because this is the part that genuinely surprised me. Some of these settings aren't just hard to find. They're placed in locations that feel almost deliberate. I'm going to walk you through 4 specific things. Do all 4, not just one. They address different issues and they work together. The first one, turn off face grouping. Open Google Photos on your phone, tap your profile photo in the top right corner. Then tap Photo Settings. From there, go to Group Similar Faces. If the feature is active, you'll see a toggle at the top. Turn it off. On some Android devices, this option is labeled slightly differently, but you're looking for face grouping or face recognition inside the Photo Settings menu. What you're doing is stopping Google Photos from building and maintaining a facial database tied to your account. Existing groupings don't disappear immediately, but new ones stop being created. This takes about 30 seconds and costs you nothing except the convenience of face-based search, which most people use maybe twice a year. The second setting is the most impactful and takes a few more steps. COM, and navigate to Data and Privacy, then look for more Google services. Inside this section, you'll find personalization options for individual Google products. What you're looking for is whether Google Photos activity is being used to personalize your experience across other Google products. There's also a broader setting under Web and App Activity. This controls whether Google saves your activity from Google sites and apps, including photos, to your account. Pausing this doesn't delete what's already been collected, but it stops new activity from being added to your profile going forward. If you want to go further, you can delete existing activity from the same page. When I did this for my own account, The amount of stored photos activity going back years was something I was not prepared for. Stay with me here, because the third setting is simple, but almost nobody has it turned on, and it's the one I wish I'd known about years earlier. Go back into Google Photos settings on your phone. Same path as the first fix. Look for an option called Remove Geolocation in Items Shared by Link. Toggle it on. What this does is automatically strip the GPS coordinates embedded in your photos before they're shared via a link. So when you send someone vacation photos, they get the photos, not a precise map of every location where you were standing when you took them. This matters especially if you share photos with people outside your immediate circle, or through shared albums where you don't personally know everyone who might have access. It's off by default. It should be on by default. It isn't. Calm one more time. Go to Security, then Third-Party Apps with Account Access. This shows every app that has been granted permission to access your Google account, including your Google Photos library. Some of these will be apps you actively use. Others will be things you connected years ago and have completely forgotten about. Revoke access for anything you don't recognize, anything you no longer use, and anything without a clear reason to need your photos. I found 3 apps in my own account I had no memory of authorizing. 2 of them I hadn't opened in over 2 years. All 3 had read permissions to my Google Drive and Photos data. Revoked. Before you go and do all of this, a few things worth saying clearly. If you're using Google Photos through a Google Workspace account provided by an employer, some of these settings may be controlled at the organizational level rather than by you individually. Check with your IT team before making changes. Also, turning off smart features and personalization does not affect the core backup functionality. Your photos still back up. The app still works. You're simply opting out of some cross-product data sharing, not breaking anything. Disabling face grouping does mean you lose the People album feature. If you rely on that to organize photos of specific family members, that's a real trade-off worth thinking about. For most people, it won't be a loss. For some, it will. One more thing. None of what I've described here touches the actual security of your Google Photos backup. What we're adjusting is internal data use, not external exposure. Your photos aren't more vulnerable to outside threats after making these changes. That's an important distinction. Look, I get it. Convenience is real, and Google Photos does things no other app does as well. The search feature alone is genuinely impressive. You can type Beach 2019 or Blue Coat or someone's name, and it finds exactly the photo you were thinking of. That doesn't happen without processing your images. I'm not asking you to delete the app or migrate your entire library elsewhere, though that's an option worth knowing about. What I'm asking you to do is make the choice consciously. Not to leave every default setting in place, because adjusting them takes effort. The defaults in most of these apps are set to maximize data collection, not to protect your privacy. That's not cynicism. It's reflected directly in how these companies generate revenue. The photos in your Google account are probably the most personal data you own. More personal than your emails. More personal than your search history. They show where you live, who you love, what your home looks like, the faces of the people closest to you. That data deserves more than a checkbox you didn't realize you were ticking when you set up the app years ago. You've been using Google Photos under terms that were never clearly spelled out to you. These 4 settings don't put you in an adversarial relationship with the app. They shift the balance back towards something more reasonable. Your memories, your terms, not theirs. Do this today. Not after the next video. Not this weekend. Today. It takes less than 10 minutes across all 4 steps. And once it's done, it's done. If this helped you, subscribe. I go through these settings so you don't have to spend 40 minutes figuring out where everything is hidden. Drop a comment and let me know which of these 4 settings surprised you most. I read every single one.